In a rural village in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, a woman named Thandiwe walked barefoot down a dusty road. The sun was already high, warming the dry earth. Her young daughter, Ayanda, held her hand. They moved quietly, step by step, past fields and small huts, their shadows long in the morning light. This was how most days began. Thandiwe woke early, tied her scarf, and walked with Ayanda to fetch water. The path to the nearest tap was long, and they carried the full containers back together. At home, Thandiwe tended to their small field, a patch of maize and a few vegetables. Ayanda helped with little hands, copying her mother's movements in the soil. Afterward, they shared a simple breakfast of maize porridge. Steam rose from the bowls, and Ayanda swung her feet under the bench, humming to herself. The house was small, built from mud bricks, but it was clean. Everything Thandiwe had, she kept with care. That morning, after their chores, Thandiwe walked Ayanda to school. The new teacher, Miss Dlamini, stood by the door, her smile warm and steady. She wore neat clothes and greeted the children one by one. "She's a bright one," Miss Dlamini said, glancing down at Ayanda. Thandiwe smiled, proud but quiet. "She loves to learn," she replied. They shared a few words, then Thandiwe turned back toward the village. But as she walked, a tightness caught in her chest. She paused, cleared her throat, and coughed, a dry, deep sound. She brushed it off quickly and kept walking. She had work to do. Over the next few days, the cough grew worse. It clung to her lungs and pulled at her chest. But Thandiwe didn't slow down. She fetched water, hoed the field, and cooked meals just the same. When neighbors asked, she waved them off with a soft smile. "It's nothing," she said. But one morning, when the cough didn't let her sleep the night before, she decided to go to the clinic. The walk was far, more than 2 hours under the sun. She wrapped a cloth around her head, kissed Ayanda goodbye, and left early. When she arrived, the line outside the small building was already long. Women, children, and the elderly waited on wooden benches or leaned against the wall. Some had come even earlier than her. Thandiwe joined the queue and waited quietly. Time dragged on. The nurse called names. People went in, then came out holding paper slips or small packets of pills. The sun rose higher. Hours passed. By the time Thandiwe reached the steps, a man in uniform came out and locked the door. "Come back tomorrow," he said. She had waited all day. That evening, Thandiwe walked home slowly. Her shoulders slumped. Her feet were sore, and her throat burned from the coughing. The sky was orange, and long shadows crossed the road. At home, Ayanda sat outside waiting. When she saw her mother, she ran to her side. "Are you okay, Mama?" Thandiwe smiled weakly and nodded. "Just tired." She tucked Ayanda into bed early, humming a lullaby as she covered her with a thin blanket. The girl's eyes closed quickly, but Thandiwe sat awake, staring into the dark. She could feel something was wrong, but she didn't have the words yet. The next day, Thandiwe went back to the clinic. She arrived even earlier this time, but the line was already forming again. She didn't complain. She waited with the others and kept her scarf wrapped tight around her shoulders. But the same thing happened again. When the sun reached the high sky, the doors closed before her turn. This time, she stayed sitting on the bench even after everyone had left. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. Then she stood and walked home again, slower than before. That night, as she reached her doorway, her legs gave out. She fell forward into the dust, her arms weak, her breath shallow. Ayanda screamed, calling out for help. Miss Dlamini, the teacher, lived nearby and came running. She helped lift Thandiwe up and guided her inside. When she saw how bad things were, she didn't wait. She found a neighbor with a car and convinced him to drive them to the clinic. This time, they didn't wait in line. The doctor on duty saw Thandiwe right away. He checked her lungs, asked questions, and took her blood. As he read her name on the form, he paused. "Thandiwe," he said. "That's a strong name." She nodded. "It means beloved." Then she coughed again, a deep, painful sound that shook her shoulders. The clinic was quiet now. The hallway lights buzzed softly overhead. Thandiwe sat on a bench inside, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Miss Dlamini waited with her, silent, close by. After a long time, the doctor returned. He held a paper in his hand, his face serious but kind. "Thandiwe," he said gently, sitting across from her. "Your results have come back." She looked up. She didn't speak. "You are HIV positive." The room felt suddenly colder. Thandiwe sat very still. "I know it's a lot," he continued. "We will help you. There are treatments. But it's important to start early." Thandiwe nodded slowly. Her eyes didn't change. She didn't cry. She just sat there, letting the words settle deep inside. Outside, Ayanda waited with a neighbor. Life was still moving. But for Thandiwe, something had changed forever. That night, back in her hut, Thandiwe sat awake beside Ayanda's sleeping form. The small girl's breath was steady, her face peaceful. Thandiwe watched her and thought about what the doctor had said. She didn't know how long she had. She didn't understand everything yet. But she knew one thing: Ayanda needed to be safe. And her husband, working far away in Johannesburg, had to know the truth. He needed to hear it from her. In the early morning, Thandiwe packed a cloth bag. She left food for Ayanda and arranged for her neighbor to watch her daughter while she was gone. Then she began the long journey to the city. The journey took all day. Thandiwe rode in a crowded taxi van, packed between other travelers, bumping along the highway. Her head leaned against the window, eyes watching the blur of trees and fences pass by. Johannesburg was loud and fast. Cars honked, people shouted, and tall buildings loomed high above her. She asked directions in Zulu, then in broken English. Step by step, she made her way toward the mining compounds on the edge of the city. She found the gate where her husband, Saifo, worked. The guard looked at her with suspicion but eventually allowed someone to fetch him. When Saifo finally stepped out, his face changed at the sight of her. Confused, surprised, then wary. Thandiwe didn't waste time. "I went to the clinic," she said. "I was sick." Saifo frowned. "You came all the way here for that?" "They tested me," she said. "I have HIV." His expression twisted. "You're lying." "I'm not." "Then who gave it to you?" he shouted. "Who were you with?" "No one," she said, her voice low. "Only you." He turned away, pacing. "You think you can come here, accusing me? You're the one who brought it." She stepped back, but his anger rose quickly. His voice turned to shouts. Then his hand lashed out. Thandiwe didn't fight back. She just stood still. When he was done, she picked up her bag and walked away. She didn't look back. The taxi home was quieter. Thandiwe kept her head down the whole ride. Her face was swollen, her arm bruised, but her back stayed straight. When she stepped into the village again, Ayanda ran to her with open arms. Miss Dlamini came by that evening. She sat beside Thandiwe and listened. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer fake comfort. "I'm here," she said simply. Thandiwe nodded. That night, she tucked Ayanda into bed again. The girl was full of stories from school, laughing about the songs they had sung and the numbers they had counted. Thandiwe laughed with her, then kissed her forehead. She didn't mention the pain in her chest. She didn't let her voice shake. She had to be strong. Thandiwe went back to the clinic. This time, she asked about medication, treatment, and what she needed to do next. The nurse explained everything slowly. There were pills she would have to take every day. She would need to eat well, stay rested, and come back for checkups. The clinic could help, but supplies were limited, and transport was hard. Still, Thandiwe listened carefully. She agreed to it all. When she returned to the village, she tried to keep things normal. She went to the market. She bought a few items, maize meal, soap, matches. But she noticed the way people looked at her. The way whispers started when she passed. Some neighbors turned their backs. Others stared too long. Rumors were starting. But Thandiwe kept walking. She had Ayanda's hand in hers. That was what mattered most. Days passed, and the dry season deepened. Dust blew low across the fields, and firewood was harder to find. One afternoon, while walking back from the market, Thandiwe overheard two women talking near the tap. "They say men are sick in the mines," one whispered. "One of them, Saifo from our village, he's not doing well." Thandiwe paused behind the trees. Her heart tightened. Later that evening, a young boy arrived at her door with a message from Saifo's cousin in Johannesburg. It was only a few words, scrawled on folded paper. "He is sick. He is coming home." Saifo arrived late one afternoon, hunched under a blanket in the back of a borrowed truck. His skin looked yellow under the setting sun. His face had changed, sharper bones, sunken eyes. He was weak, barely able to walk. A few neighbors came to see. Some stayed back. Others didn't come at all. Thandiwe stepped forward. She helped him from the truck, ignoring the tension in the air. Ayanda peeked from the doorway, unsure of what to feel. Saifo didn't speak much. He lay on the mat and closed his eyes, shivering. By morning, whispers were spreading. "They both have it. Stay away from that house." Thandiwe heard them but said nothing. The house was small, and neighbors had already started pulling their children away from Ayanda. One woman stopped speaking to Thandiwe altogether. That evening, Thandiwe made a decision. She walked to the edge of the village, to the open land beyond the last homesteads. There, she chose a flat spot. It was close enough to walk to, but far enough for peace. She would care for Saifo there, away from the fear, away from the judgment. With help from Miss Dlamini, she gathered old tin sheets, wood scraps, and empty sacks. Bit by bit, she built a small shelter. It wasn't much, just enough to cover them from wind and sun. When it was done, she laid down a mat, carried blankets, and helped Saifo move in. Each day became a pattern. Thandiwe woke early, fetched water, and boiled it over a fire. She washed Saifo's sheets, cleaned his skin, helped him sit up to eat when he had strength. She measured out his pills, fed him porridge with a spoon, and wiped sweat from his forehead. Sometimes he slept for hours. Other times he groaned in pain or called out in confusion. His body grew thinner. His voice softer. Thandiwe didn't complain. She didn't look away. Ayanda stayed mostly with Miss Dlamini now, visiting only when it was safe. The teacher brought small supplies, soap, clean cloths, even a little food when she could spare it. One afternoon, she brought a book for Ayanda and sat in the hut for a while. She didn't say much. Just sat beside Thandiwe and held her hand for a moment. No one else came. One quiet evening, as the sky turned red behind the hills, Saifo opened his eyes and looked at Thandiwe. "You stayed," he whispered. She nodded. "You are still my husband." "I was a fool," he said. "I was angry. But you didn't leave me." Thandiwe reached out and touched his hand. It was cold and shaking. There was no need for more words. He closed his eyes again, and she sat beside him, listening to his breathing. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat upright on the mat, her back against the wall, watching him. The air was thin. The stars outside flickered quietly. And with each hour, his breath grew slower. The air in the small shelter was still. The wind outside had settled, and even the insects had quieted. Thandiwe sat beside Saifo, barely moving. His chest rose and fell, slower each time. His breath rasped, uneven and faint. She held a damp cloth to his forehead and whispered small things, not prayers, not stories, just the sound of her voice. Things she would have said years ago, when they were young, before the sickness and anger. Saifo opened his eyes once. He looked at her, but the gaze was distant. He blinked slowly, then closed them again. Just before dawn, his breathing stopped. Thandiwe didn't cry right away. She leaned forward, rested her forehead gently against his chest, and stayed there for a long time. When she finally stepped outside, the sky was turning pale gray. Morning had come. News of Saifo's death spread quickly. Some villagers kept their distance. Others stood quietly at the edge of the open land, watching from far away. Thandiwe prepared him herself. She cleaned his body, wrapped him in a blanket, and sat beside him until the burial. Only a few people came. The funeral was quiet. A simple hole dug into the dry earth, a handful of words spoken by an elder. Miss Dlamini stood beside Thandiwe the entire time. Ayanda held her mother's hand, her eyes wide and uncertain. She didn't speak much, just leaned into her mother's side. After it was done, the others left quickly. No one lingered. Thandiwe and Ayanda stayed a little longer. She placed a stone at the head of the grave and whispered, "Rest." Then they turned and walked home. Days passed. The cough still came, but Thandiwe stayed on her feet. She moved slowly now, her strength weaker than before, but her will had sharpened into one clear promise. She would live long enough to see Ayanda go to school. That became her only goal. Each day, she woke early and pushed through her fatigue. She cleaned, cooked, fetched water, and looked after Ayanda with quiet focus. She still walked to the clinic for her checkups, never missing a visit, no matter how tired she felt. The nurses began to recognize her. One of them started keeping extra medication aside in case the deliveries ran short. "You don't talk much," the nurse said once. "But you keep coming." Thandiwe nodded. "I have something to finish." The day the uniform arrived, Ayanda danced in circles. It was a tiny thing, light blue with a white collar, neatly folded in a plastic bag. Miss Dlamini had helped arrange for it through a donation from the school district. Thandiwe unfolded it gently and helped her daughter try it on. The fabric hung just right, and the girl stood tall, beaming in front of the mirror. Thandiwe laughed, soft and proud. Her eyes were tired, her face thinner, but her smile was bright. "You look like a real student now," she said. Ayanda nodded. "I'm ready." That night, they ate porridge together, and for a moment, it felt like nothing was wrong. Just a mother and daughter, sitting side by side, dreaming of tomorrow. Morning broke with the sound of birds and the creak of the wooden door. Thandiwe helped Ayanda get dressed, her hands slow but careful. They walked together down the same dusty road where the story had begun. The wind picked up small bits of dust and tossed them across their feet. At the school gates, Miss Dlamini was waiting with a smile. Ayanda turned and looked up at her mother. "Will you be okay?" she asked. Thandiwe nodded. "Yes. You go now. Learn well." Ayanda hugged her tightly, then ran through the gates. She joined the other children, laughing and holding her little bag. Thandiwe stood for a long moment, watching. Then she turned and began the walk back home, step by step, down the road she had always walked. The dust rose behind her feet. The sun was still warm. She had kept her promise. After Ayanda started school, the day settled into a different rhythm. Thandiwe still rose early, but now the mornings felt quieter. She would prepare a small breakfast, help Ayanda with her socks and shoes, then watch her walk away with the other children. When the house was silent again, Thandiwe rested. Her strength wasn't what it used to be. Some days, she could barely make it to the field. Other days, she sat under the tree near the house, breathing slowly, her scarf pulled tight around her head. But she didn't stop going to the clinic. Each visit was a test. Sometimes the queues were long, sometimes the pills had run out. But Thandiwe waited, always patient, always steady. "You're still coming," the nurse said again one afternoon. Thandiwe gave a small smile. "I have to." Despite everything she had done, the village had not forgotten. Whispers still floated behind her back. Children were pulled away when she passed. At the market, some people would not take her money unless she left it on the table instead of handing it over. But Thandiwe never shouted. She never explained herself. She simply continued. Miss Lamini remained her only real friend. She visited often, bringing books for Ayanda and small treats, soap, cooking oil, sometimes fruit. They spoke about the future, and the teacher encouraged Ayanda's reading and numbers. "She's sharp," she said. "You gave her that." Thandiwe didn't say much. But she listened closely every time. One afternoon, Thandiwe waited near the school fence to walk Ayanda home. She heard laughter first, clear, strong, beautiful. Ayanda came running, breathless and full of light. "Mama, I read in front of the whole class today." Thandiwe knelt slowly and held her. "I knew you could." The joy in Ayanda's voice stayed with her long after they reached home. That night, they read together by candlelight. Ayanda held the book and sounded out the words, one by one. Thandiwe listened, eyes soft, smiling in the shadows. Those moments were small, but they filled her chest with warmth. She didn't speak of pain anymore. Not even when it was hard to breathe. The rains came late that year. The air was dry and sharp. Thandiwe's cough returned, deeper now, and more frequent. Her hands shook sometimes when she tried to lift a pot or carry water. On bad days, she stayed in bed. But she always got back up. The nurses at the clinic began to watch her more carefully. One of them offered to bring her medicine directly, but she refused. "I must walk," Thandiwe said. "My legs still work. So I'll walk." Even when her body betrayed her, her spirit did not. On a cool morning, the sky low with cloud, Thandiwe once again walked the dusty road. She moved slowly, each step measured, her scarf wrapped tight around her head. At her side, Ayanda skipped along in her school uniform, her bag bouncing behind her. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. At the school gate, Thandiwe stopped. Ayanda looked up. "See you later, Mama." Thandiwe touched her cheek. "Learn everything." Then Ayanda turned and ran through the gate. Thandiwe stood a while longer, watching the children disappear into the school building. The sound of their voices faded. Then, slowly, she turned back down the path. The road stretched ahead, dry, familiar, endless. She walked it with quiet dignity. The wind tugged at her skirt. The dust rose behind her. And still, she moved forward.